Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. Let's talk about what's in the news or has been in the news right now. The Alamo plan, the decision not to move the Cenotaph, and then these three reports that have been released by the Alamo, I guess it's a master planning committee, I'm not sure
I
what the
believe so,
official name.
yes.
Where are you in the plan right now? And you're part of the...
I've been a part of the Alamo Citizens Advisory Committee since we started in May of 2014. Then Mayor Castro appointed me to represent the tourism industry on that group, and we've been a part of it every step of the way, although I would say for the last year and a half, we haven't had much to do and haven't been spoken with very much.
And now the Citizens Advisory Committee is a local group, different than the master planning kind of triple-headed group.
That's correct. The Citizens Advisory Committee helped put together the guiding principles that the master plan would utilize. And then we were supposed to partner and work side by side as it happened to ensure that those elements of the guiding principles were adhered to.
With the city and the state and a private group in charge.
Correct, right. Now there's a management committee, I think, that is chaired by Councilman Roberto Trevino, and then there's a variety of city and state officials that make that up, and that's really the group that's in charge of things. But we've had one meeting as a Citizens Advisory Committee in about the last year, and it was a 1-hour meeting they hastily pulled together after the Cenotaph vote. It took us 15 minutes to call roll and 45 minutes of talk time, which was mostly them talking to us, and we accomplished virtually nothing.
What has it been like since that beginning in 2014 when you were on the master plan or on the Citizens Advisory Committee?
I thought it was a really thoughtful process that everybody engaged in. I thought Mayor Castro did a good job of putting together a diverse group of people who do not all agree. And you don't want a whole bunch of people that agree. That's not going to get anything done. And there were some frustrations when we were finished because there were items like the group never called for the demolition of these historic buildings that we're in today. What we said was repurpose the buildings for the use of this visitor center that they want to build. The other thing that nobody had ever heard of, ever, was all of a sudden there's going to be a building built back behind the Alamo Chapel to house the artifacts. And to the statement that had always been the case, I've talked to probably up to 10 members of the committee. Nobody's ever heard of that. It was never in our notes, our meetings. It was never on the agenda. Nobody heard about that.
Never in the advisory committee here, but was it in that state and private and city group?
It may have been in the management committee group, but it was never in the advisory committee group. And part of our role is to help ensure that the guiding principles are adhered to. And in order to do that, you know, you've got the city and state, they're in partnership with each other. They literally have an agreement together, right? But what's happened is politics has poisoned this situation. There's no trust. There's very little communication going on. And here's an example, Randy. The Friday after the THC vote, the city of San Antonio took down the fencing around the Cenotaph because it was not needed anymore. It's not going to be moved. On Saturday morning, the state of Texas put it right back up. Now these two groups are in partnership with each other. So the city wasted our tax dollars on Friday afternoon, and the state wasted our tax dollars on Saturday morning.
Well, now the city owns the land but leased it to the state, right? The General Land Office. Yes. So who's in charge?
Well, that's a good question. Who is in charge? The Citizens Advisory Committee, one of the things that we would like is to have a chain of command chart. You know, you've got the Alamo Management Committee, you've got something else, the Alamo Trust, and then you have the Citizens Advisory Committee, and they're not in charge, nor should they be. But if this group is going to exist, there's a lot of frustrated members on that advisory committee right now. I've been in touch with quite a few of them, and none of us have time to be potted plants. If we're going to give of our time and our energy and our talent, we'd like for it to be listened to.
Why did they take it down, and then why did the state put it back up?
The city took it down, my understanding, was because they weren't going to be moving the Cenotaph anytime soon. The state put it up out of its concern, I guess, that it needed to be protected, concerned that there may be people that came and did something to it. And here's my point, though, is if they're in partnership on this plan and they can't get their act together to discuss what they're going to do with fencing, it's really a microcosm of how this entire plan has been handled. All of the time that's been spent, all of the money that's been spent, which, by the way, me and others on the Citizens Advisory Committee would like to have an accounting, a full accounting, just like Dan Patrick called for. How much money has been spent, and what have we accomplished? Because what I've seen is politics have taken root, and ego, and turf protection, and you've got essentially a liberal city fighting a conservative state, and they're not partnering together.
Well, now the state, it's two different parts of the state. It seemed like, we found that out on the Historical Commission vote, that the city and the General Land Office, which owns the Alamo property,
Yes.
per se, they partnered with George P. Bush at the head of the General Land Office. But when it got to the Historical Commission, that's when legislators got involved. And
Yes.
that was a different state entity. And they didn't like what the General Land Office did. And there was Dan Patrick versus George P. Bush, and you're talking about politics.
Yes.
So how do you partner now with the legislature, which is a political body that's going to be changing?
Well, that's a good question, and one of the questions that the advisory group wants to talk about. What became apparent in the THC meeting that day were the comments from Dan Patrick. There's no trust for, and I don't know why. I'm just going to tell you what I saw, what I felt. There's no trust from his part towards the city or towards Councilman Trevino for whatever reason. George P. Bush absolutely abdicated leadership on this project. If there's nothing else you take from this interview, George P. Bush has failed to deliver on this project. He has made this the centerpiece of his presence as the General Land Commissioner. And on the most important moment so far for this plan, he didn't show up, he didn't testify, he damn sure didn't work the votes because they lost 12-2. And I still don't understand where he is and why he's not being asked about his role in that failure. That particular component of the plan was pretty fundamental to the entire master plan.
Moving the Cenotaph was one of the 6 guiding principles, or it was part of the one to recapture the old mission footprint.
Right. That was an attempt to be able to show people in the future the size and scope of the actual battleground, and it was an attempt to have additional space to do interpretive experience.
But that was created 6 or several years ago.
Yes.
And then by the time we got to the Historical Commission, was there any communication with them beforehand?
I think there was, but we were, the Citizens Advisory Committee hadn't been met with since I believe November of 2019. All we were told at the very end was contact them and tell them you want them to vote yes. We don't know what was going on. What I know is that you don't call and ask for a vote if you're going to lose 12-2. In fact, if you're going to lose 7-6, you don't call and ask for the vote. You work to get to yes.
Well, they had put it off, or the
They had put it
Historical
off
Commission
many
had put
times.
it off.
Right.
Now, do you think this got caught up in the push to, or the controversy over moving statues? You talk about the move from the old Confederate statue from Travis Park and across the country, and very controversial. Do you think this got caught up in it?
I do. I think the friction in an election year between conservatives and liberals, and unfortunately the amount of distrust that exists in our country, many of the people who were fighting against the removal of that were also upset against the removal of the Confederate statue in Travis Park.
But it wasn't a removal, it was to move it 500 feet south.
Well, they were upset about the removal of the Confederate statue, right? They were upset and worried about the removal of this. My focus is a bigger picture than that. To me, it's not about any one element of the plan. If you want this plan to exist, there's going to be some give and take. And what you do is if the Cenotaph is going to stay, then figure it out, work around that. But the worst thing that could happen at this moment is that for the city to say that the entire process has to start from scratch and we're going to start over with a new master plan. That's crazy, and it's going to cost the plan massive support, a lot of time, and it may make people not want to hang around and invest.
Reading between the lines when Dan Patrick was speaking toward the end of the Historical Commission vote, he talked about he didn't think that some people were, how did he put it, yoked to the same ox, basically talking about Roberto Trevino. And Dan Patrick wanted the main thrust of it to be the Alamo story, and didn't want these, I thought that was the main overarching.
For sure.
And didn't want the nuanced story of the whole 300 years of the plaza. How do you see that affecting the plan in the future?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest points of contention, more so than the removal of the cenotaph, because there is a disconnect between members in the state and some of the city about what does it mean to tell the whole story. Here's what I think the Citizens Advisory Committee meant when they said that. The thrust of the story, of course, has to be 1836. With all due respect to all other elements that we are going to tell, that's why people visit. I've been involved in the businesses down here since 1986, and very few people are coming to find out what happened in 1600 or 1700. But the Alamo, being the reason people come, give us the opportunity to tell the history of the space, which you need to. If you want to work into why was this place important? How did the battle, why did it occur here? Why was this a spot where people made their stand, right? You have to understand what this space was and how it was used in history. And then you can lead into the battle and discuss the differing views of each side without saying who's right or wrong. You don't have to do that. You can leave that to the visitor, right? But you tell, this is what this side felt, this is what this side felt. You talk about the battle, and then you talk about the aftermath of the battle. So you use history to lead up to it and lead out of it, because a big part of 1836 is what that led to and the development of this city. This is the center of the 7th largest city in the country now. It wouldn't have been had it gone the other way.
But now, leading up to the battle, it seems like some people are concerned that telling that story might besmirch the 189 defenders, that there was a movement that involved, possible slavery,
right,
and that anything that, again, might cast a bad reputation on the defenders of the Alamo. We talk about good versus evil or whatever. Those have to be the good guys, according to some people. Mexicans had to be the bad guys. And that seems a little bit of the controversy.
Well, no, for sure it is. And the advisory group didn't tell them how to tell the story exactly. It talked about the elements that need to be talked about. But let me give some perspective. If you have, I'm making this up, if you have 20 galleries in this world-class visitor museum, and only 3 galleries relate to 1836, then you swung and missed in a huge way. Oh my goodness. That's the biggest swing and miss in the history of San Antonio. The thrust of the experience has to be about 1836, but the history helps understand context and what was going on, and I don't think that takes away from the sacrifice and the battle and its significance. One of the things that I emailed to Councilman Trevino and the city and the entire Citizens Advisory Group right after the THC vote is we better get our act together and define very clearly what that means, because our lack of doing so has allowed Dan Patrick to define it in his terms. And his terms are a powerful statement. It may not be accurate, but it's getting news. And if you want this project to move forward, we're going to have to partner with the state. We've got 2 entities right now who are not working well together.
And how about the trust, the private group that is supposed to raise all this money?
Right.
Where are they in this, and are they getting skittish?
Well, the trust just had its main gentleman leave, Doug McDonald. So you've got a plan that's making no progress, that just had its major foundation shot down. And now you've got the gentleman who was in charge of that, of actually running the Alamo and raising the funds for the plan, and he's gone. So there's a lot that's up in the air at this point. And what we need is bold, strong leadership that can move through the politics and sit down without the media around, trying to make each other look stupid, and actually have a conversation about how do we work together to get this thing to move forward.
And that was one of the things that we'd seen over the years, is there never was a visualization of what was going to happen to these buildings.
They've been very quiet about it. And again, the Citizens Advisory Committee never once said we want you to rip these buildings down.
I guess there were actually some visualizations that had different possibilities.
Yes, they did. They had where you could keep the facade, like what happened at the River Center Mall, right? They kept the facade and then gutted the inside. And just so you know, all the historical elements to the lunch counter stuff was long gone before Phillips Entertainment ever got here, okay? We did not remove those items. And my understanding from that second report is that really the pictures and the counters, the lunch counters where much of this occurred was down on the Crest building on Houston Street. But I'm not a historical expert on that, and I would leave that up to the
And that's what they
historians.
found in that.
Right.
I guess that was the third one, was an examination of the press reports and which one was first. Was it the Crest? Was it the Woolworth? And I think they decided that the Crest was quote unquote first, although they happened all in the same week. All
Right.
those six
It's all
lunch
relevant.
counters.
It's all relevant, you know. And it could be a part, there is no reason why you can't work in portions of the story that talk about those things. They are important. The development of San Antonio and of Alamo Plaza after the battle was possible because of the sacrifice of those defenders and what led to the Battle of San Jacinto, right? This was a key element for the development of Texas as we know it today. None of these other things would have happened had this not happened. So when we talk about the thrust of it, this is Davis Phillips talking. I can't speak for behalf of the entire committee. I need to make that clear. But my understanding, spending hours of my life in these meetings for over 6 years,
Along with a lot of other citizens here.
oh
who-
yes,
yeah.
was that telling the whole story did not mean treating 1836 as just one other little event that happened to occur in the space.
Was that a misinterpretation of the Historical Commission?
I believe it was. I believe it was used and twisted in a way to make it sound like the same kind of concerns that people had about why the Cenotaph might be wanting to be moved. Same thing about the storyline. Now, I'll say this. And our next meeting is supposed to be sometime in November. This needs to be one of the very most important topics, and I've made it clear in emails to Councilman Trevino and to the mayor and to the city manager that we need to define what this is, because if what we mean is that 1836 is just going to be treated as one other part of the story that happened here, I'm not going to participate in that committee anymore. That's not what we said.
It has
I
to
was
be
in
the-
those meetings.
The keystone of what it is.
It has to be the foundation of the experience, but that doesn't mean that we ignore or dismiss the history that's all around that.
And now, fast forwarding to a couple of different things, and we'll move forward and back. The recent announcement by the committee to build a building repository museum behind the Alamo, you say we're blindsided on that. Did that have to happen to get Phil Collins' collection because they had to have a plan by 2021?
That my understanding, and again, the Citizens Advisory Committee has been given zero information on this. We know as much as has been released to the public, which is another one of our frustrations. But yes, there was a date at some point that the exhibitry had to be displayed and that there had to be structural plans being put together for how the future home would be. And so it seems as if that they have decided to do what they need to do to salvage the plan, and that's fine, but don't act like that's been part of the plan all along, because I've been here since we started and before Councilman Trevino was on this plan. That was not part of our plan. That was never discussed. I've never heard of that.
And now, for those people who don't know or from out of San Antonio and haven't heard, Phil Collins, the singer from Genesis, for whatever reason over the years, and I've talked to him about it, is a huge Alamo fan and has accumulated this incredible collection of Alamo.
Yeah, it's going to be the basis of what they put into the museum from an exhibit standpoint. And it's the biggest collection that there is, apparently, and a big part of why this plan was put into place. But because Phil Collins knows how efficient and effective and how fast government moves, he was smart enough to put a timeline on it, and that's why you see them scrambling at this point to get this taken care of so that they don't lose that. But the other part that was clearly made, I thought, in the article was that this isn't in lieu of, right? They're still wanting to put their businesses in where our business is, and this is going to just be where eventually they hold exhibitry that's not on display.
That brings us to your businesses. The state originally bought these buildings, these Palace, Crockett, Woolworth buildings, right across from the Alamo, across from the Cenotaph in 2015.
Yes, sir.
With the intention of moving businesses here out to an entertainment district. And that was part of the plan from the beginning. So where are we in terms of an entertainment
Well,
district?
it wasn't part of the plan from the beginning. Part of the plan from the beginning was they weren't real worried about all of us. I was able to sit down with Gene Powell and some others, Welcome Wilson, early on after the state had purchased these buildings, and try to show a path forward where there's really a win-win. And because if this is done right, if it's not led by power and ego and money, and you're focused on the end user, which is a real critical thing when developing anything, if it's done the right way, it really can be transformative to the city and to the state.
But
right?
now the argument has always been, at least on some people's part, oh, those tacky buildings,
Sure.
those tacky businesses, they cast a shadow over the heroic acts that happened here.
Yeah, I don't buy that for a moment. I think that the people in the Alamo fought to give us a chance to self-determine and for freedom and free markets to be able to take place. And we wouldn't be here, Randy, if it wasn't for the millions of people every year that come and support the businesses.
It's expensive to lease this land.
We pay $68,000 a month in rent. And next year we're going to pay $69,000 a month. And next year we're going to pay $70,000 a month.
And that's just for these
just
two
for
buildings?
Just for these two buildings. I'm not in the Crockett building. I'm in the Palace and the Woolworth. Other than the state of Texas, probably Phillips Entertainment is the single largest donor to the Alamo plan at this point, because they take all of the dollars that these buildings generate and put it into the plan. So what we talked with them about was to give them some perspective, because most people don't realize the economic impact of these businesses. They look at them as these little bitty small businesses, and individually they are, but when you look at them as a collective whole, the entire block and the ones around the corners that are all affected by this plan, it's over 400 employees. It's a $6 million payroll.
And you replaced some businesses that had failed.
Yes. Oh, there's been 33 businesses in the last 35 years or so that have failed.
On Alamo Plaza.
In Alamo Plaza and in Plaza de Valero, in this whole area. And everybody thinks because they didn't have a product that the visitors wanted to see. The vast majority of the people that come to downtown are visitors. Most of them are from Texas. Roughly 80% of the visitors to San Antonio coming here from a leisure perspective are from Texas. And they are looking to have a good time. And here's the little secret that everybody wants to act like it's not true. They do both. They go to the Alamo, and then they also come across and spend much more time and money at the attractions across the street. And the economic blend of history and entertainment is very, very powerful. And what is concerning is that we have power and ego and politics leading the charge, and they have no skin in the game. And most of these people that are pushing this are going to be gone when this is all over with. They're not going to be held accountable for what they leave behind.
Do they want a museum that they can come in from outside San Antonio, look at, and leave, and that doesn't matter if it closes at 5 or 6 in the afternoon?
Yeah, they don't care. We do half our business because we're open past 5 o'clock, between 5 and 10 or 5 and 11 or 5 and midnight.
When the Alamo's
But government places just shut up. It doesn't matter if people are still here wanting to do it. They just close up because it's government. And get this, we have our businesses here, just these 3 businesses that we have close to 200 employees, and we pay our own bills, we pay our own taxes, we entertain visitors and locals. There was a big line of locals here this weekend for Fright Nights. And we do all this, we don't ask for anything. But if we're removed and what gets placed in here is this museum, it's going to actually need to be subsidized. So think about this. We are removing successful businesses, small family, locally owned and operated businesses, so that government can put in its business, do the same thing that we're doing, selling tickets, selling retail and food and beverage. And yet we're going to need to subsidize that because it's not going to be able to pay for it.
Well, no, the argument is when it's a much bigger, better attraction, that it will bring in more money. I don't know in terms of how much.
I think that will make more money, but I've been told by Doug himself, the gentleman that just left that was in charge of raising the funds, that the plan would need to be subsidized. And I laughed at that, and I said, listen, if you had a private entity running that, if I ran that, it wouldn't need to be subsidized, I promise you, because you're going to do a lot more people than we do.
But now it seemed as if legislators and the Historical Commission and Dan Patrick was saying whatever it costs from the state, they will put into it, and that could include, subsidizing a museum.
Right, right. And that's what's going to happen. But so my point is, you want history and entertainment. What we don't want, this is at its core, we are a family fun destination in San Antonio, right? There's a little something for everybody unless you want to go skiing. If you suck all of the fun and the life and the vitality out of downtown, and you put in this calm and serene and everybody be quiet and it's just this is the way it is now, that's not successful if you're worried about jobs and economic impact.
Well, now, is it also because families go to the Alamo, what we think of as the Alamo?
Right.
The common three words that we hear from the rangers and everybody that they say is that it?
Right. Sure.
So they go in, they spend, an hour?
Oh, not even that.
And then they come across and they see what you have, and they
spend half a day.
They have little Timmy and whatever who
Right.
is more attracted to this kind of stuff.
Right. Well, the challenge is the Alamo is presenting the experience of what went on there essentially the same way it did in the 70s and 80s. They haven't adapted. And that's part of the challenge. The issue for the guest experience being poor over there right now is not about what is or isn't across the street from the chapel. It's about how they have chosen to create the experience for the guest over there. And so that's why I keep going back to, if this is done right, and if people, hopefully, as they develop the details of this plan, people from our industry will be involved. We don't need to be the ones telling the history. That's for the history professors. But we can make it come alive in a way, Randy, that touches all the different generations. You've got to appeal to the 6-year-olds, the 16-year-olds, the 26-year-olds, the 56-year-olds, and there's different ways to do that.
How would you do that without, I know some people will hear what you just said and say, oh, he wants to turn it into a theme park.
No, you don't do that. You can do that in a very respectful way. One example that just pops off my head is the World War II Museum in Fredericksburg. If you've seen that, that's exceptionally done. It's done in a very respectful way. It's not a theme park, but it's an interactive experience. The key is you want people, especially young people, to understand the sacrifice that was made here and why it was made and what it led to.
Is there the space to do that in what we now think of as the Alamo? All you have is the long barracks, you have what was the library, and you have the chapel.
Well, you could do it if you did if they could build a museum back in the gardens of what's really essentially behind the Alamo.
Now that's what they're talking about now, right?
Well, they're talking about a smaller building that would just kind of house the collection, but not really. It's not its major world-class vision that they have. I think you could put it into the courthouse. You could put it into these buildings. You could build something significant back behind the Alamo and do that there. Whatever you're going to do, let's do it right, and let's not have this be led by ego and politicians and money.
You talk about the courthouse. That's one thing we haven't heard anything about in this plan. Now the federal government owns that. Where are they in developing, or
my understanding is that's not in play. Right. The federal government had spent quite a bit of money renovating that and also putting in a parking garage behind there. And so originally the focus was really just the Alamo. But when I was able to sit down and talk with them about, look what could happen here, right, guys? If you create this world-renowned experience that really will bring people to this city like never before, and you're able to create an entertainment district like this city's never seen, where you allow attractions and like House of Blues type places and retail and restaurants and bars that have different rules for signage and sounds and facades and all sorts of stuff. And so where the whole area, if you want to go somewhere fun and cool and hip, locals and visitors, this could be a really cool place. If you do that, then that's awesome. But the frustration here is the only progress that's been made in this entire plan has been on the Alamo side, because that's where the consistent focus has been. There has been zero progress made on the entertainment district, or how are we going to take care of these businesses? What are we going to do? Where are we going to move them? There's none of that.
And now there was talk of the entertainment district how many years ago?
Oh, it's been going on since 15.
And there
2015.
was it a promise to you that there would be an entertainment district
There was,
created?
it was just listed in the plans that, we're going to create the entertainment district. We're going to, reform the Alamo experience. We're going to create the entertainment district. It's been said in private. It's been said in public. It's been said in the printed plans. It's not been a secret. But while I will say that the city has put forward some effort on it, it hasn't achieved any results.
I've read that they had looked at multiple sites, and that there was some, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, some advancement on that. Where had they looked at, or have they looked at?
Well, there are a couple of sites. I don't want to say where, because I still am hopeful that we'll be able to create something. I think failure is not an option. I think if you care enough and you want it to happen, you stay after it. And just like you've seen the city and the state stay after the Alamo plan, and they've had all sorts of objects and problems put in their path, but they've not stopped. When the projects and issues presented themselves to the entertainment district side, and nothing's happened.
Well, now you have a lease here till what, 2028?
Yes, sir.
Are you afraid the state's just going to let that run out? And
Well, but that's not good for anybody, right? We don't want that to happen. I am not trying to stop this plan. I'm trying to help this plan. I'm trying to make sure that it gets done the right way, but at the same time, I'm like, hello, we need your attention and focus. There's 2 parts to this plan. There's over 400 jobs. I think it's 300 direct and like 460 total jobs that are impacted by what happens here. And the Alamo is not going to have that many jobs. They're going to increase from where they are today. But what you don't want to have is you don't want to subtract $36 million a year in revenues when you've already got what the Alamo's doing, plus you have 400 jobs over here. You don't want to, that doesn't have to be an either or.
Well, now they're going to say, well, it'll bring in more in terms of hotels and all this kind of stuff. At the same time, is it the foot traffic that is in front of the Alamo that drives this business? Could you survive in another location that's not right in front of the Alamo?
It needs to be close enough to the Alamo. It needs to be a part of a bigger experience. The reason these attractions have done so well is because they are close to the Alamo. But there have been a host of other businesses. Just off my head, Wendy's and Burger King were here in these buildings before we got here. And these are well-known worldwide brand names that did not make it here. It's not just a matter of, oh, you're here, so you're going to be successful. You have to manage the high seasonality of cash flow, and you've got to be something that people want to do. Man, Randy, it is not simple. And if we didn't have enough people here, we'd be gone. And the fact is, people do both.
What do you want to have happen after? Do you want to be here, or do you want to move? Have you accepted that you're going to move?
Yeah,
or?
I think I would like to stay where we are. We didn't start this family business to have it end in 20 years, right? But I'm also willing to work with the state and the city, and I've told them that you guys need to get focused on this. And we need to work with ourselves and with Ripley's Entertainment, our parent company for a couple of our franchise businesses, and then they own the Waxman Museum and Ripley's down the street. We need to stay working together in a consistent manner and not stop when we hit a roadblock, and keep pushing through.
How about that entertainment district? Where are you on that, and what do you want to see them do?
I want to see them have a meeting on it. I want to see them continue to work on it. And if that's not going to happen, then let's look at what Plan B and C might be. Failure's not an option. And if what I've learned through this Alamo plan is that if there's enough will, political will and money, there ain't anything that can't be done.
I asked Roberto Trevino about this a couple of months ago. Entertainment district, where might that be? What could it be? And it was kind of up in the air, but he said, one of the things that he said is the Riverwalk could be, and I think we use the word expanded, like they have done in Brooks. They have kind of taken a creek that runs into it, and they have made it a linear park.
Right.
And they did
That could work,
expand. They
possibly.
expanded the Riverwalk down to the River Center Mall, or Hemisphere first, and then River Center Mall. Could they expand that Hemisphere Park extension even further into Hemisphere? Would that be
possible? It's possible. And listen, the businesses are willing to talk about that. We are not trying to be an impediment, but we're not going to sit here like potted plants and let them roll over us. We want to be a part of the process. We want them to engage. We want them to do what they promised. What they promised is, we're going to take care of these businesses. We're not bad guys. We're not some evil, huge, big corporation that's treating its people poorly. We've had people that have stayed with us 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, 10 and 15 years. We've got a team of, it's a family out here, right? We're local, we live here, we pay our taxes here, we send our kids to school here. This is a small family business that is getting steamrolled right now by city and state government, and it's not right.
But that image that some people can't get by and use the word tacky and schlocky and kitschy and
Sure.
Is that something that's surmountable?
I think it is, and I first of all, I respect how anybody else wants to feel. If they don't like it, that's okay. They don't have to come buy a ticket. But to remove parts of the economy, the free market, I'm gonna pick this part, but I'm gonna get rid of this part. That's not how the free market works, right? And so to have government come in and pick and choose which parts, here's the truth, Randy. Texans and people from the Mexican army died all around downtown. It wasn't just where our attractions are. They died far beyond the post office, far beyond the Gibbs building, far beyond the Minger Hotel. There was a wide swath. So we can't say that just the interior of the fort was hallowed ground where the Texans died, but outside of that, that's not hallowed ground.
Now, this has been controversial in this area for 100 years. When Adina de Zavala locked herself in the long barracks trying to save that, there was talk of a hotel being built right next to the Alamo, and there was concern about that. And eventually this group came in, and then the state reimbursed them. So the state came in and essentially did the same thing with the long barracks, because that could have been a moneymaker right next to the Alamo.
Sure, sure.
Some people are going to see this as the same and then say, okay, what happens now with that foot traffic? I have an issue with foot traffic because
it's really critical to our success.
Tourists don't walk that far.
No, they do not.
And when they go from here to the Market Square, that's close to a mile. And they might go on a different day. They might take a cab. They might take a while to get there. If you move that far away.
No, that wouldn't work. Randy, if you took our businesses right where they are and just swung them to Houston Street, we'd go out of business. Come out here on a weekend and look at the crowds that are on Alamo Plaza and then peek down Houston Street. And it's damn near empty. It's not anything like the crowds that you see up here. If you are an attraction, you want to be on the Alamo Plaza area or very, very close to it. I talk about it as in terms of a three-legged stool. You have to have proximity, visibility, and accessibility to the walk-by traffic. If any one of those legs is missed or knocked out, it collapses.
But then that's as close as you can get, Houston Street.
Right. Now, if it was just us by ourselves, okay? If you have a vision and enough support from government to help try to make it happen.
An entertainment
An
district.
entertainment district can change that dynamic, right? Especially if there's linkage somehow from wherever that would be to the traffic pattern.
People might not understand the concept entertainment district, or they have different ideas of that. Sure. How do you see it?
Well, it's an entertainment district. One example I would use is if you've ever been to Universal City Walk on your way to Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. That section before you get into the theme parks where there are shops and retail and different fun things to do and signage and music and cool facades to the buildings, a whole different set of rules than what you see right now. And in the historical district is the buildings aren't fun or exciting, and you have lighting and signage and those kind of restrictions in an entertainment district. And I'm not advocating for the entertainment district to be on Alamo Plaza, okay? But wherever it would be, it needs to be somehow close enough, have a linkage to the foot traffic, and have a different set of rules. I know of a handful of companies in our industry who were sitting here waiting, tapping their feet, waiting for the city of San Antonio and the state of Texas to get their act together and clarify this hurricane of uncertainty that they've created. Because once they do, if they do it the right way, a lot of people want to come in and invest because of the potential success in this market. But as it stands, everybody's just sitting back, us included. We're not expanding and doing different things right now in the core of downtown because who the hell knows what's going to be going on?
Is there room in the core of downtown? You're talking about different places to look. Is Hemisphere?
I think there are. I think there are if there is a true desire to make sure that these businesses are maintained. And let me make sure I'm being clear. This is not just about our little family business, okay? There are 17 businesses that are directly or indirectly affected right in this little area by this plan. I'm 3 of them, or 4 if you include the Mirror Maze that we operate on a management agreement. There's a lot of people whose livelihoods depend on it. And here's something nobody thinks about. So the Alamo does between 1.5 and 2 million people come visit them a year, right? And it's free to go in. So the numbers of that will probably drop a little bit when there ends up being an admission charge, at least in terms of the visitation to the museum. I'm not saying it'll drop to the chapel and to the grounds over there. But the businesses across the street, when you put them all together, do more than the numbers that actually go to the Alamo. And I don't say that because we're not more important than the Alamo, but I say it to provide the context of there is a theme park style economic impact occurring across the street. And so as we work this plan, we don't want to eliminate it. You don't add to the mix by subtracting a huge part of it, right? Let's get this plan done right, and let's stay focused on how do these businesses survive, not only survive, but how do we put them in a position to thrive? And that is on the state and the city, because we've chosen this. And 30-something years ago, 32 years ago, when my father and grandfather opened up the Wax Museum and the Ripleys, guess what? City Council had their arms around their necks, cutting the ribbon, thanking God that somebody was investing in the hellhole that was that time Alamo Plaza. It was failed business after failed business. It was a place only the homeless called home. If you were here in the early 80s, you remember what this looked like. There were no families after dark in Alamo Plaza. There were no successful businesses here. There was a string of failures. And the attractions have actually anchored the economic success of this downtown area. And I get it if other people feel like they're not appropriate. So let's have the conversation of how do we maintain these businesses in our downtown where they can be successful, and how do we help this plan be successful?
They gutted the Joskies building when River Center Mall, the Joskies part of that was redone. Behind the Alamo, you have that view shed where you can't build anything higher, but there are parking lots in the area. Close to the Menger, there's some parking lots in the area.
Right.
Would that be close enough? You have to have quite a big footprint for what you're talking about, right?
And listen, anything can be adjusted. What do you think would happen to the Alamo viewshed rules if the state decided they wanted to put their big museum back behind there? You think they might have a little adjustment in mind?
Yeah, but if it messes with the photo op, I can't see.
It may not. I mean, I'm just saying there's options. Right.
You could put it, you
no also bigger can build down.
Right.
And up to a certain point.
As you see in New York and a number of places under the World Trade Center.
Right. Randy, there's all sorts of options if we're committed. And what worries all of the small businesses around here, not just us, but all of us, is there's no commitment or focused effort on how are we going to maintain all of these elements of the family fun.
But the cost of it, the mega millions that it will take, you have a different set of politicians now in the city than 30 years ago, and the state, and you'll have a different set of politicians in
Absolutely.
5 years, 10 years.
You have a different set of politicians than when this plan started in 2014, right? You didn't have George P. Bush back then, I don't think, or he was just getting in perhaps, I can't remember. Maybe he got in.
And Dan Patrick wasn't quite as powerful as Dan Patrick is.
And we had a different mayor, and we had Diego Bernal. I mean, the players have already changed, but they've stayed focused on it. And that's why I think they should stay focused on the other part of the plan, which is the entertainment district.
Where's the money going to come from? Now, when the city talked about it, they just talked about it.
Well, where's the money going to come for what?
For an entertainment district.
Money would come from an entertainment district from, I believe, a mixture of city and mostly probably the state in terms of raising private dollars. I wouldn't necessarily advocate that we spend tax dollars on that kind of stuff. The state is providing dollars to run the Alamo, to preserve the Alamo, to keep the portions of the plan that are occurring right now funded. But once the final plan is decided and they know where the building's going to be, and we've worked through all of the issues of the Cenotaph and all of that, then that's when you're going to start seeing the private donations come in. And if you can raise $60 million for the Tobin Center, which is a beautiful facility, right? Think about what could you raise for something as iconic as the Alamo when you start talking about this outside of Texas and across the country and the world.
Do you think part of the reluctance or the slowdown is it because when we think of an entertainment district and creating it for your businesses, people again look at those, it's snobbery, maybe they look down their nose
Sure.
at those businesses.
I've developed very thick skin, Randy, over the last 10 plus years on this topic.
But you have to sell them on the fact that you want not just your businesses, but other businesses around it
Right.
to thrive. That's a tough
of course.
sell.
It's not just about us, right? I mean, we're the sauce on the steak. We're not the steak. Nobody comes here just for us.
But in terms of an entertainment district, you have to sell them on an idea of some things that aren't here yet.
Exactly. But we're not saying that the state is not going to build it all, right? The state's got to work and help get the land secured and work out different deals for bigger groups to come in that are going to invest. But you're going to see private investment come if the city and the state can get off their rears and get together and actually have respectful conversations where they start to trust and stay focused on this. This can happen.
Do you think the Alamo Trust should spend some of that money? We're talking about, there's this wide variety of how much money is going to be invested in this plan. It was from $200 million to $450 million.
I think you're looking at north of $500 billion when this is all said and done. That's just my opinion.
$500 million.
I'm sorry.
500.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, $500 million.
But
thanks for catching that.
And so that could include an entertainment district, which would also.
Yes, and Randy, think about it like this. So we came in here a long time ago and started the attractions, right? We've put our roots down here because this is family business for us. I'm the third generation to be in this industry in Texas tourism. My grandfather started in Ocarina Springs in 1964. And so I'm third. I'd like to hand it to the fourth. This isn't just a job to us. This is what I want people to understand. We love what we do because we have opportunities to give young people jobs and opportunities to teach them life skills, opportunity to teach them leadership, opportunities for them to make money. We get to entertain visitors and locals and have them create memories, and we get to have fun doing it and make a living from it. It's awesome. One of the most things that helps me enjoy what I do is working with young people. This doesn't show up on our P&L, but the chance to work with young people for the last 30 plus years, and man, have they changed, but they all still want the basic same things. They want to learn, they want to have opportunities, they want to get better, and that is really neat. We love what we do. It's not just a paycheck. It really isn't. So all of us have put in our money, we've invested, we've taken our risk, we've paid back our loans, we've paid back our investment groups. We're just getting to the point now where it's starting to get nice, and now everybody's saying, y'all just need to go, okay? So for those businesses, ours and others, that's when I say that if you want us to leave before 2028, so you can be in here in whenever, mid-2020s, then you do need to rebuild us or compensate us in some way. We've already built ourselves. We shouldn't have to do that again,
and
right?
You have helped the Alamo succeed, do you think? I mean, because
I think it's a great symbiotic relationship because if you watch people, they do both. And certainly we have put in time and tremendous effort to try to help this plan. Everybody thinks, oh, these guys must be against the plan because it's going to hurt them. No, because this is going to be good for Texas and for San Antonio. I love this destination. And if this is done right, what it could mean for this city, you can't even measure it, what it could do for us. But my worry is it's mired in politics. Do we need to adjust who our leaders are leading this? Do we need to take a different approach? I don't know. But when the plan collapses like it has so far, Randy, do you know that these horrible walls look like the damn Berlin Wall out here?
You're talking about an Alamo Plaza.
Alamo Plaza has looked like a war zone since last year. They put up these fences in February of 2020 to prepare for the move of the Cenotaph before it had ever been approved. We're spending money but on a plan that hadn't been approved yet. We're getting the pad prepared for a plan that hadn't been moved yet. And nothing's happening. Almost nothing has happened except they removed the gazebo.
And some archaeological work. Is that?
Well, but they can do that without putting up the Berlin Wall all around the plaza.
Is the plaza going to be lowered? Have you heard anything more about that? It was going to be lowered like a foot or 18 inches.
There was discussion. I don't know for sure if that's going to be incorporated into the final portion of it, but that was part of what was talked about. And I think at the very least, again, this is just Davis talking, you need a flat surface. We've got too many levels that make it difficult for our visitors to navigate. Not everybody can go up steps, right? People in wheelchairs or older folks, it's trip hazards. I think one element of the plan that makes a lot of sense is blocking it off to vehicular traffic eventually, because this is essentially a pedestrian plaza, and our visitors take their lives in their hand every day crossing Alamo Street because it goes both ways and they don't realize it. They're in travel mode. You know, when you're in travel mode, you don't read the rules and the signs very well, right? They're looking at the Alamo and they're all excited and they just walk out into the middle of a road.
And some people drive down that bus lane that's southbound they shouldn't.
Yeah. And so we don't want anybody to be hurt. I think that part of the plan certainly makes sense and shouldn't be controversial.
What do you know about when those walls or fences or whatever you call them are going to come down?
I don't. I'd like you to ask those questions too, because I've asked them and we receive either no response or a bunch of this.
State versus city as to who's in charge?
Generally. And you know, here's my question. My biggest question is, the Cenotaph isn't moving. All of this fencing was put up to prepare for that. Why the hell is it still up? This is these are the people that are trying to create a great visitor experience for our museum someday, and look at what they're doing. And there's no consultation. There's ways to do that. Six Flags and SeaWorld could help. They build attractions within their theme park and don't make it look like that while it's being built. There's all sorts of ways to make it look nice and to create a great guest experience with signage and directions and welcome and things like that.
What has it done to your business with those?
When those fences went up, it killed everybody. They put up fences in July of 2019 with zero notice to all of us, blocked off access from people walking from the Alamo across to us, to put in protective bollards. And it was supposed to be done, I think this was July, it was supposed to be done by December. And those fences didn't come down until, I believe it was February when they finally came down. And it was because the bollards they got were wrong. And so they had to get some new bollards. And when they got those in, they put those in. And these are temporary bollards, by the way, that are going to go away when the plan is finished. But there was no concern or thought to that we might be destroying businesses in the area. Randy, our business makes money 4 or 5 months a year. We make money in March, June, July, and August. And so for the state to be doing things like that, the communication between the state and the surrounded businesses, affected businesses, has not been great.
What about the difference in management of the Alamo itself? From years ago when the daughters owned it to now when the state owns it, in terms of how much the Alamo is open, how friendly and welcoming it is. Have you noticed any difference, or is it the same?
I haven't really noticed too much difference in terms of when they're open or, you know, if anybody's friendly. I would say Texans generally are pretty good and friendly, and I think both groups do a nice job of welcoming our visitors. I would say that I think that the current group has done a little bit more in trying to create some of these interpretive experiences with the headsets and the tours and some more enacting live events and stuff like that they've done. But there's so much more that can be done. At the end of the day, when this is all said and done, you need a private group to operate it. Please, God, don't let it be run by government. Are you kidding me? We're going to have the same experience when we open. It'll be 100 years from now, it'll be the same experience because government doesn't innovate.
What do you tell people about maybe coming down right now? I was here in July, been down here pretty much every week, Riverwalk, this area, it was dead. Now it's come back pretty well. I was down here, Friday and Saturday night. We talked about you had a big business, but everybody did, like the Riverwalk. Some people might be concerned, I don't know about, social distancing and that. What do you tell people from San Antonio and around Texas? They see this.
San Antonio is absolutely coming back from a leisure perspective. We still aren't seeing our conventions and our meetings. They're going to come back at some point next year. But from a leisure perspective, people coming down here with their family and their friends to have a good time. The summer was really, really rough, but it started to improve a little bit in August. September was really pretty good, and October was really strong. And I think people are tired of being cooped up at home, and they're learning how to live and play in a world of COVID.
Is it different for hotels, though? We hear that hotels are still having trouble.
Yes. Our hotels do well on the weekends because of the leisure visitors, but then they're having a harder time during the week because there's not as many business travelers and conventions.
It also seems to me that this part of downtown is doing a lot better than the western part of downtown. I was stunned the other night. Mi Tierra was closing. Mi Tierra never closes. That was their tagline. Market Square is only open from like 12 to 4 most days, 12 to 6 and 12 to 7 parts of the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. How do you connect with the western part of downtown? And will that come back? It seems like there's a lot of construction over there. Some city hall, some new hotels, a lot of that stuff. It almost seems like a separate part of the city.
We're coming back in stages, I think, is what you're seeing, right? People are coming back to the core elements of our downtown right now, which are the Alamo and the Riverwalk, the shops and the bars and the restaurants that are all around here are seeing improved, strengthening numbers. It's still not where most everybody wants to see it. But guys, we're so far from where we were 3 or 4 months ago. Was a desperate situation for everybody. And it's a world of difference now in the leisure side, okay? Leisure versus meetings and conventions are still separate. I am very encouraged, and I believe that we are headed in the right direction. And I think when businesses take seriously social distancing and all the safety protocols that have been put in place, and they make that clear to your visitors or to your guests, the people are ready to go out and have fun, and they can still do it in a COVID world. We just finished our October of 2020. It was the highest grossing revenue month any October ever. And I'm shocked to even be telling you that, but I'm so thankful because this year, Randy, I think part of it is people are getting used to living in a COVID world. I think people are becoming a little bit more willing to go out as long as they feel like the places they go are taking precautions. And the other element that we believe we're seeing is this schoolcation thing where children are learning virtually and they can do that on the road, in the car, in a hotel room. They're not restricted to just weekend traveling right now. So we saw better than normal weekdays and then of course really strong weekends through the month of October and even September. September was our second best September.
Do you see a great Christmas season, holiday season?
I do. I see us continuing to strengthen back up. One thing I know, there is a tremendous amount of pent-up demand. People are tired of being at home. We all love our families and our pets, but there's only so much of just sitting around those 4 walls we can take. People want to get back out, but they want to do it in a safe and smart way. And so that's our job, right? Myself and all of the business owners down here, we've got to do this in a smart way so that we are allowed to continue to operate.
But the other part of the COVID effect is cutting the state budget, cutting tax revenues for the city, cutting all that. Private money coming in, some of the old buildings, the Express News building still hasn't sold, the Knicks building, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that.
You're talking about state programs being cut because of the impact on
just the money in terms of what could develop an entertainment district is
I would
in limbo.
If there's enough political will, there's not anything that can't get done. Dan Patrick made the comment, which this is the first we've heard of it, during the THC plan. He said, if we get this plan right, the state will just pay for the whole thing. Well, that's never been what we've all talked about. What we talked about is the city's putting in a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of private dollars, and then the state's going to contribute some too. I think a smart fiscal approach and again, this is me injecting common sense into the world of politics, so this probably goes nowhere, but allow the people that want to help fund this to put their money in. Let's don't do this all from tax dollars. We don't have to do that. And they need to tap that rainy day fund to help deal with the state's budget that we're going to be facing, because what we do know is this is temporary. When we come out of this COVID thing, we're going to be okay and the economy is going to roar again. So what do we do to help fund things to get us through to that point? I wouldn't suggest slashing everything when you've got, what, 10, 12, 13 billion sitting in a rainy day fund? That's what in the world would it be for?
They didn't spend that for education a number of years ago as well.
No, they didn't. But if it's supposed to be for emergencies, I don't know that we've ever seen a bigger one.
Are you confident now that these buildings will stay after that report came out and saying they're historically significant?
No, because what you didn't see in there was the final thing of what they're going to do with it. They talked every which way, upside down and backwards and forwards, and never said actually what they're going to do with it. Kind of like politicians. I even emailed Councilman Trevino after I read this 140-page document, and I said, are we keeping the buildings or not? I'm still waiting for an answer.
Well, it was supposed to be just a report that they would decide.
Yes.
From reading that report. What do you think they'll decide?
I really don't know. They have not told us anything. I think, again, I am not speaking on behalf of the advisory committee. I think that if you try to knock these buildings down, you are just having another fight that this plan has to go through, and there's not much more political capital that can be spent and allow this plan to survive. And if it makes everybody happy to keep the facades and then redo your insides like we did at the mall, then let's do that, right? Keep the Cenotaph. You can do this. It's not going to be anything everybody wants, and if we insist on that, we're all going to get nothing.
Anything else I haven't asked you about?
I don't think so.
You have a whole lot of frustration right now. Do you have any optimism? Is there any reason, aside from how the business is doing right now, that you look ahead and say, well, you know, this is a good cause for that? Well, or maybe Dan Patrick said that the state could pay for it.
I do. I always have optimism. You are sensing a lot of frustration because I'm tired of politicians talking and getting nothing done. I'm tired of it. It's happening on both sides. I'm tired of seeing them not work together well. But I believe there are pathways to success when we get everybody focused and sitting down and refusing to take no for an answer. We got to keep, every time we hit an obstacle, we should be asking ourselves, okay, what do we do? How do we get to yes? Instead of how do we make them look stupid or how do we win or whatever. It's not about winning. How do we get, if we want this plan to move forward, let's make it happen.
What do you tell people out there who are concerned about this? What would you want them to do? Because people have seen it up until now. It's a committee, it's the city, it's not me. What do you want the average person to know and to be able to do? What do you think?
First thing I would suggest that they do is read the guiding principles. Don't let other people tell you what they say. Read the guiding principles. Stay informed. Talk to your city council people. Talk to the mayor. Talk to the city manager. Talk to Councilman Trevino. Talk with the GLO. Send them questions if you've got it. But legislators. I would probably wait till after the election and after we know the results and let all that stuff die down. Right? And when that dies down and we can actually start focusing on getting something done, I think the more people that educate themselves on really what the plan is all about, and don't let yourself think about the plan from a 30-second soundbite during an election year. That's never accurate. Either way, get involved, educate yourself, and ask questions. Show up to these public meetings. But I would urge them not to fail to support the plan because it's not 100% what they like.
We're coming up on the legislature in 2021. If there is something that could be written and passed, and you could talk to a local state rep, state senator, governor, lieutenant governor, what would you want passed? What do you think is doable in this?
In terms of support of the plan, or?
Of supporting the plan, supporting something here.
I think they need to continue to fund this plan, and I hope that they don't take it there's some discussion that could be taken from the GLO, and I don't know where it's going to go and if that's helpful. To me, that's politics and it sets the plan back. I would like to not redefine everything and start from scratch.
Move the ownership from the general land office to some other part of the
Right,
state.
right, because then now you've got a whole other group of government that's got to get up to speed on what's going on. And we may need to change the different individuals from each entity that are in charge of it, but let's get some people who can develop some trust and stay focused and working together. I would say to continue to fund this plan and look for a way down the road to get to yes.
Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right.